Welcome to Chapter 6, Modal Verbs for Advice, Obligation, and Probability. Modal verbs allow us to recommend actions, express rules and necessity, and show how certain we are about a claim. In this lesson, we will focus on choosing an accurate form and controlling the strength of our meaning. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to give strong and soft advice. Distinguish obligation from recommendation. Express prohibition and lack of necessity. Show different degrees of probability. Make cautious academic claims. And correct common modal verb errors. After a core modal verb, use the base form of the main verb. She should study regularly. The policy may reduce inequality. Costs could increase. Governments must act. Do not add s, to, or another tense ending to the main verb. It may reduces costs is incorrect. It may reduce costs is correct. Core modal verbs are followed directly by the base verb. Should improve. Could reduce. Must follow and might increase. Some related expressions include to, ought to improve, have to follow and need to change. These expressions have similar functions, but they do not all follow exactly the same grammatical pattern. Use should plus the base verb for advice, recommendations, and actions that you consider desirable. For example, individuals should maintain a balanced diet. Governments should invest more in public transport. Should not advises against an action, but it does not normally express a legal prohibition. Ought to is formal advice and has a meaning similar to should. For example, countries ought to protect vulnerable workers. The negative form is ought not to plus the base verb. People ought not to ignore professional advice. Ought to is correct, but it is less common than should in everyday modern English. Could can introduce a possible solution or a softer suggestion. For example, governments could offer tax incentives. Students could join study groups. In these examples, could presents one possible option. It is usually less direct than should. Should and must are different in strength. Citizens should recycle more. The action is advisable. Drivers must obey speed limits expresses a strong obligation or rule. The action is required. Do not use must when you only intend to give advice. Use must plus the base verb for strong obligation. Firm instructions. And rules presented by the speaker or writer. For example, all candidates must show identification. Governments must protect personal data. You must submit the form by Friday. Must expresses strong necessity rather than a simple recommendation. Use have to or has to when a rule, requirement, or situation creates an obligation. For example, employees have to wear identification cards. She has to complete a medical examination. Applicants have to provide supporting documents. The negative form is do not or does not have to, which means that an action is not necessary. Use need to for practical necessity. For example, students need to manage their time effectively. The system needs to be updated. Governments need to address the underlying causes. Do not need to means that an action is unnecessary. You do not need to include every detail. Must and have to often overlap. With must, the speaker or writer presents the obligation as strong. For example, you must submit the application today. For have to, it commonly refers to a requirement created by a rule or situation. For example, I have to submit it today because the deadline is tomorrow. This difference is useful, but context is more important than treating it as an absolute rule. Let's check this. It's prohibition or no necessity. Must not expresses prohibition. For example, you must not share confidential information. means that sharing it is forbidden. For do not have to and do not need to, they express a lack of necessity. For example, you do not have to attend the optional session. Means that attendance is optional. Also, you do not need to bring any equipment. Means that bringing any equipment is optional. These meanings must not be confused. Past and future obligation. For past obligation, use had to plus the base verb. For example, participants had to complete a questionnaire. For future obligation, will have to is often useful. For example, future applicants will have to meet the new requirements. Please note, must has no separate past form, so must is never correct. Use had to for a past obligation. May, might and could can all express an uncertain possibility. For example, the policy may reduce unemployment. Prices might increase next year. The change could affect rural communities. Their meanings overlap, and the exact strength depends on context and tone. They should not be taught as fixed probability percentages. Can often expresses a general or recurring possibility. For example, long working hours can cause stress. For one uncertain event in the future, may, might or could is generally more suitable. For example, the new policy may reduce emissions. Must can express a strong deduction based on available evidence. The lights are off, so the office must be closed. Demand has risen sharply, so there must be a reason. In this use, must does not express obligation. It expresses a conclusion that the speaker considers highly likely, but it is not necessarily a proven fact. Use cannot or can't for a strong negative deduction. For example, the office is open, so it can't be a public holiday. Can't expresses the conclusion that something appears impossible. Mustn't expresses prohibition, so the two forms are not interchangeable. Should can also express an expected or likely result. For example, the new system should reduce waiting times. In this example, should does not give advice. It expresses an expectation based on current information. Modal verbs can show different degrees of certainty. It might be effective expresses an uncertain possibility. It should be effective expresses a reasonable expectation. It must be effective expresses a strong deduction. However, these forms do not represent exact percentages. Their strength depends on context and evidence. To describe an uncertain possibility in the past, use may, might, or could have, plus the past participle. The policy may have affected employment. Costs might have increased. The delay could have caused further problems. These forms show that the speaker is not certain about what happened. For a strong positive deduction about the past, use must have, plus the past participle. For example, the road is wet, so it must have rained. For a strong negative deduction, use can't have, plus the past participle. For example, she was overseas, so she can't have attended the meeting. Both conclusions are based on evidence. In academic writing, avoid making claims that are stronger than your evidence. For example, this policy will solve the problem makes a definite prediction. This policy may help to address the problem is more cautious. Next, technology always improves education is an absolute claim. Technology can improve some aspects of education recognized as a general possibility, without claiming that the result is universal. Let's check some common mistakes. After may, use the base verb, may reduce. The policy may reduce costs. After should, do not add to, should invest. Governments should invest more. Do not add s to must, applicants must provide identification. A modal passive requires be, must be addressed. The problem must be addressed. Finally, mustn't means prohibited. If the session is optional, say you don't have to attend. Identify the meaning expressed in each sentence. Choose from advice, obligation, no necessity, prohibition, possibility, and strong deduction. Read the whole context before deciding. Pause the video and identify all 6 meanings. Let's check the answer. 1. Should expresses advice. 2. Must show expresses obligation. 3. Do not have to expresses no necessity. 4. Must not expresses prohibition. 5. Might reduce expresses possibility. 6. Finally, must have left expresses a strong deduction about the past based on the evidence that the office is dark. Let's do this together. After should, use invest without to. Governments should invest. After can, use reduce. Must does not take s. After might, use improve. After cannot, use solve without to. They cannot solve every problem. In the final sentence, must be successful is too strong because the condition does not prove success. May be successful presents a more appropriately cautious possibility. Let's review. Core modal verbs are followed by the base verb. Should can express advice or expectation. Could can express a softer suggestion or possibility. Must can express obligation or a strong deduction. Have to and need to express necessity. Must not expresses prohibition, while do not have to expresses no necessity. May, might, and could express possibility. Always match the strength of your modal to your evidence, and do not rely on fixed probability percentages. Thank you for watching.